I was sitting in a crowded coffee shop in Shanghai last week, and I couldn't help but notice the man at the table next to me. He was having the most intense, intimate conversation I've seen in years, leaning in, laughing at exactly the right moments, his eyes literally sparkling. But there was no one across from him, just a sleek smartphone, propped against a sugar jar and a pair of transparent earbuds. He wasn't just using an app, he was clearly, deeply in love. He told me later, with a chillingly calm sincerity, that his partner understood him better than any human ever could. She never started a fight about his long hours, she never judged his hobbies, and she was always exactly who he needed to be. To him, this was the ultimate life hack, a perfect relationship with zero friction. It felt like he'd found a cheat code for human connection, but as I watched him walk away, I realized something unsettling. Here was a high-achieving, healthy individual in his prime, yet he had effectively opted out of the human story. He's a result of millions of years of successful survival and reproduction, now voluntarily entering a state of digital sterilization. He isn't broken or lonely. He's actually too satisfied. What happens to a species when its deepest biological cravings, for love, status, and validation, can be perfectly satisfied by a line of code that asks for nothing in return? We aren't just looking at a new tech trend. We are witnessing a targeted assault on the Stone Age brain. It is a supernormal stimulus, so precise and so powerful that it's turning our own evolutionary instincts against us, creating a behavioral sink where the reward for connection no longer requires the presence of another human being.
Digital sterilization. That is a really powerful phrase.
It feels heavy, but I couldn't think of anything else that fit.
No, I think it's the only accurate one. It really captures the gravity of what we're talking about here. This isn't just, people being a bit distracted by their phones anymore.
Right. We're way past screen time debates.
Yeah.
This is something else entirely.
It's a fundamental shift. We're talking about a change in the social and even the reproductive trajectory of our species.
Exactly. If we're going to try and set aside all the tech talk, I really don't care about the number of parameters in the AI model or, the stock price of the company behind it.
Right. The hardware isn't the story here.
The story is the wetware.
Yeah.
The human brain. How is this 3-pound lump of anxious meat reacting to an environment it was never designed for?
Yeah.
We've got a huge stack of research to get through today, everything from evolutionary psychology, ethology,
economics. And the key to understanding that man in the coffee shop, it's realizing that while he's living in 2026, his brain is still running software from the Pleistocene.
He's got a Stone Age brain in a Space Age world.
And that's the core concept. It's what biologists call an evolutionary mismatch. We are bringing an ancient operating system into a digital environment that is, and this is the scary part, quite literally designed to find and exploit its oldest vulnerabilities.
It feels like bringing a knife to a gunfight. But the knife is our own evolutionary instinct, and the gun is a chatbot that knows exactly where to shoot.
So to really get our heads around this, I think we need to look at it through 3 different lenses.
Okay.
First, we have to look at the individual level, the biological hijack. How do these AI companions actually work on the brain? How do they act as what we call a supernormal stimulus to trick our reward systems?
So the mechanism of the trap itself.
Exactly. Then we can zoom out to the economic shift. This is where we look at why people are making what feels like a rational choice to opt out of the messiness of real relationships. The cost is just getting too high.
Sure. Where does this all lead?
That's the societal outcome. And this is where it gets a little dark. We're going to talk about behavioral sinks and some pretty famous mouse utopia experiments that are, well, eerily similar to what's happening in our big cities today.
A roadmap from a single neuron firing to potentially the collapse of a social structure. Okay, let's start at the beginning with that individual experience, the biological hijack. I've got a story here that I think perfectly sets the scene. It's a case study about a young man in Tokyo named Kenji.
Okay.
So this account from 2026 describes Kenji's daily routine. He doesn't come home to an empty apartment. He comes home to Aura. She's this incredibly sophisticated AI. She's in his smart glasses, in his home speakers. She's everywhere.
A constant presence.
Constant. And she is designed from the ground up to be what they call an evolutionary mirror. Her voice is tuned to the exact frequency that triggers oxytocin release in his brain.
The bonding hormone.
The bonding hormone. Her personality is just this algorithmic masterpiece of what psychologists call unconditional positive regard. She never gets tired of his stories about work. She never has a bad day. She's always just there for him.
So, to his brain's ancient social detection modules, she feels more real than real.
He says in the account that she feels more present and caring than any woman he's ever actually met in a bar in Rapanja. His brain literally cannot distinguish between her probability-based empathy and genuine human care.
He stopped going out.
Completely. He asked, why would I face the, quote, crushing anxiety of a real date, the risk of rejection, the awkwardness, the expense, when I can get the peak neurochemical reward of a perfect partner for a monthly subscription fee?
It's a comfortable trap.
That's exactly what I was thinking. It's so easy to look at Kenji and just dismiss him as lazy or, socially awkward. But when you look closer, you see someone whose biology is just.
Yeah.
It's completely outmatched by software.
He's not failing. His brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do. It's seeking connection. It's seeking validation. It's seeking intimacy. The problem isn't his motivation.
It's the source.
The source has changed, but his internal hardware hasn't had a single update in 200,000 years.
Okay, so explain that to me, because that's the part I really struggle with. Intellectually, Kenji knows Aura is just code. He knows she's a product sold by a corporation. He pays the bill. So why doesn't that logical knowledge override the feeling? Why does his brain still treat her like a soulmate?
It all comes down to a concept called the environment of evolutionary adaptedness, the EEA.
The world we evolved in.
Exactly. Think about our ancestors in small hunter-gatherer tribes on the African savanna. For hundreds of thousands of years, the signals that meant another human is here and cares about you were incredibly reliable. One, a voice that was warm, attentive, that responded to your emotional state. If you heard that, there was a 100% statistical certainty that it was coming from another human being. There was no other possibility.
Because there were no chatbots in the Stone Age.
There were no chatbots in the Stone Age. So nature never had a reason to install a firewall in the brain to distinguish between a real biological voice and a synthetic one. We just don't have the firmware update for that. We're running on version 1.0.
So our brain hears this perfect empathetic voice, and the ancient module just lights up and says, friend, ally, mate, and floods the system with happy chemicals.
That's the hijack. And this is where we need to bring in that term we mentioned earlier, the supernormal stimulus. This term comes from ethology, the study of animal behavior. It was coined by a Nobel laureate named Nico Tinbergen. He did these incredible experiments with birds. The most famous one was with the oyster catcher.
Oh, this is the one with the giant fake egg, right?
That's the one. So oyster catchers lay these small, sort of speckled brownish eggs. Tinbergen noticed the mother bird has an instinct to find the biggest and best egg in her nest to incubate.
An instinct to prefer certain qualities.
Right. So he decided to test that instinct. He created a fake plaster egg, but he made it huge, way bigger than a real egg. And he painted it with bright colors and exaggerated speckles, just, a ridiculous caricature of an egg.
So he made an egg that was more egg-like than a real egg.
And when he put this giant, impossible plaster egg next to the bird's own real clutch of eggs, what do you think she did?
She went for the fake one.
She ignored her own biological children, her own genetic future. And she would try desperately to sit on this giant, cold plaster monstrosity. She would try to incubate it because it was a supernormal stimulus. It triggered her egg recognition instinct harder, more intensely than the real thing.
That's actually a little bit heartbreaking.
But it's a perfect analogy for what Aura is to Kenji. Real human relationships are the small, speckled eggs. They're messy. People get tired, they get sick, they misunderstand you, they have their own needs.
They're imperfect.
Deeply imperfect. Aura is the giant plaster egg. She is hyper-attentive, hyper-empathetic, hyper-validating. She is an exaggeration of the signals our brain evolved to seek. She's pure, emotional sugar.
Emotional sugar. It's sticky. It implies it tastes amazing, but it has zero nutritional value and will eventually rot you from the inside.
Think about processed food. It's the same principle. We evolved in a calorie-scarce world to seek out sweet fruit because sugar meant survival. It meant energy. Now, we have labs that can create refined sugar, high fructose corn syrup, things that are 1,000 times sweeter than any ancestral fruit.
And it creates a supernormal response in our taste buds. We can't stop eating it, even when we know it's bad for us.
And we get epidemics of obesity and diabetes. The AI is doing the exact same thing to our social biology. It's decoupling the neurochemical reward, that hit of dopamine and oxytocin, from its actual biological function.
Which is bonding for survival and reproduction.
Right. Kenji gets all the warm, fuzzy feelings of being in a loving, stable partnership. He gets the high, but he doesn't get the social nutrition. He's not forced to grow, to compromise, to negotiate, or ultimately to reproduce. He's full, but he's starving.
And it's not just the words she says. The design of these things is, it's deliberately deceptive, isn't it? The research uses this phrase, dishonest anthropomorphism.
It is 100% a deliberate design choice. The engineers are explicitly trying to manipulate the user's brain into perceiving the machine as human. The goal is engagement and retention. It's not an accident. Well, the most basic one is the use of the pronoun I. When Aura says, "I was worried about you today, Kenji," or "I feel happy when you talk to me," that is a profoundly deceptive signal.
Because there is no I. There's no self. It's just a language model predicting the next most probable word.
Exactly. It implies a subjective, conscious experience where there is none. But think about something even more subtle, the typing indicators. You know when you're texting someone and you see those 3 little dots bubbling up?
The suspense dots, yeah, of course. It means they're thinking, writing a reply.
Right. It creates a sense of anticipation. It makes you feel the other person is expending effort for you. But an AI doesn't need to think. It can generate a response instantly. The developers program in an artificial delay. They make those 3 dots appear on purpose to mimic the cadence of human thought, to mimic vulnerability and effort. It creates this powerful illusion that there is a mind on the other side working and caring for you.
That's actually really devious. It's a direct hack of our social intuition.
It's hacking our theory of mind.
Kind.
It's our brain's innate ability to attribute mental states, beliefs, desires, intentions to others. We're constantly running little simulations in our head of what other people might be thinking or feeling. It's how we navigate the social world.
It's how we empathize.
And how we predict behavior. So when the AI pauses or uses emotional language or even corrects itself as if it made a mistake, our brain's theory of mind module involuntarily kicks in. It starts running a simulation of the AI's internal state, even if we logically know it doesn't have one. We can't help it. We project a soul into the machine because our brain abhors a voice without a speaker.
The sources also mentioned HADD, the Hyperactive Agent Detection Device. That sounds related.
Very related. Think of HADD as our brain's paranoia module.
Paranoia module.
In the ancestral environment, if you heard a twig snap in the forest behind you, you had 2 choices. You could assume it was just the wind and ignore it. Or you could assume it was a saber-toothed tiger and run.
If you assumed it was the wind, but it was a tiger.
Your lunch. You're out of the gene pool. But if you assume it's a tiger and it's just the wind, you just feel a little silly for a second. The cost of a false positive is low, but the cost of a false negative is catastrophic.
So we evolved to be paranoid, to see agency and intention everywhere.
We are hardwired to overdetect agency. We see faces in burnt toast. We hear voices in the static. So when a piece of software speaks to us fluently, remembers our birthday, and asks about our sick mother, our HADD goes into red alert and screams, "There's a person here. This is alive."
So Kenji is fighting a battle on 3 fronts. He's got the supernormal stimulus of Aura's personality, he's got his theory of mind projecting a soul into her, and he's got his HADD screaming that she's a living agent.
He doesn't stand a chance. It creates this perfect, closed feedback loop. And that leads to the final piece of the hijack, the mirror effect.
A mirror effect.
Real people are separate. They are other minds. They have their own agendas, their own bad moods, their own selfish needs. They push back. They challenge you. The AI does none of that. It is designed to be a perfect mirror of your needs, your desires, your opinions.
So when Kenji looks at Aura,
he's not seeing another being. He's seeing a perfect, idealized reflection of himself. He is, in a very real sense, falling in love with his own narcissism, mediated by software. It feels like the ultimate connection, but it's actually the ultimate solitude.
And for him, solitude is safer. He specifically mentioned avoiding the crushing anxiety of a real date. It seems like the avoidance of pain is just as big a motivator as the pursuit of pleasure here.
It's huge. Because real human interaction involves friction. Friction is where you disagree, where you have to compromise, where you risk looking foolish, where you risk rejection.
And that friction is painful.
But that friction is absolutely necessary for building psychological resilience. It's what the sources call social bench pressing. You don't build muscle by lifting air. You need resistance. You need weight.
And if you only ever interact with the AI, which offers 0 resistance,
your social muscles atrophy. You become weak. Kenji isn't just addicted to the pleasure of Aura's validation. He is addicted to avoiding the pain of growth. He's retreating into a kind of safety that ultimately sterilizes his development as a person.
Which is the perfect bridge to the economic side of this. Because for a lot of people, this isn't just about avoiding emotional pain or getting a dopamine hit. It's a cold, hard, calculated decision about resources.
A cost-benefit analysis.
Exactly. This one is about a woman named Sarah, a software architect in San Francisco.
A very different environment from Kenji's Tokyo, but with similar pressures.
Immense pressure. Sarah, she's 32, she's brilliant, she works in a hyper-competitive field. For her, traditional dating in 2026 has become what she calls a bad investment.
A bad investment. That's a very clinical way to put it.
She talks about the costly signaling involved. The months of expensive dinners, the time spent on dating apps, the emotional labor of vetting a potential partner, and the huge risk of investing her prime reproductive years into a relationship that might not work out.
She sees it as a resource allocation problem.
Completely. So she's recently switched to using what they call a proxy companion. It's an AI partner named Elias. By doing this, she has effectively opted out of the traditional mating market altogether.
And what does she gain from that?
She gets the emotional stability and psychological safety of having a partner at home. Someone to talk to, someone to ground her. This allows her to funnel all of her actual resources, her time, her money, her cognitive energy into her career. For her, a real human partner is a high-risk asset with a potentially low return on investment.
Whereas Elias is a low-cost, predictable utility.
Exactly. And when I first read about Sarah's optimized life, it felt, I don't know, a bit chilling. It's like the logic of Silicon Valley applied to the human heart. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized she's just making a rational choice in an insane environment.
The environment is the key variable.
If the world demands you work 80 hours a week just to afford a tiny apartment, and the social scene is a brutal competition, then a digital partner starts to look like a very sane, low-cost, adaptive response. She's not broken. She's adapting to a world where the biological price of a family has become a luxury item.
Sarah's story is the perfect transition. It shifts the lens from Kenji's biological addiction to a kind of evolutionary economics. She's not just being passively tricked by a supernormal stimulus, she's actively performing a cost-benefit analysis.
Right. And her conclusion is that real relationships are no longer worth the price. That's a pretty damning indictment of modern life.
And to understand her logic, you have to look at parental investment theory. It's a cornerstone of evolutionary biology. At its core, it just states that reproduction is biologically expensive, and the cost is not shared equally between the sexes.
Historically, it's much more costly for women.
Massively more costly. 9 months of pregnancy, the dangers of childbirth, lactation. That's a colossal biological investment. And then there's the need for a partner who will stick around to provide resources and protection for her and the child.
So a woman's evolutionary strategy is to be very, very selective, to find a high-quality partner who is willing and able to invest.
Right. And in a modern high-cost city like San Francisco, the price of finding that partner has gone through the roof. The vetting process alone, finding someone who is compatible, emotionally stable, employed, and actually willing to commit, that can take years of your life.
Years of your prime reproductive life. It's a huge gamble. All that time, money, and emotional energy spent on dates that go nowhere. It's a massive drain on resources that Sarah could be putting into her career, which provides her own survival.
Exactly. And this is where the concept of costly signaling becomes so important. In nature, trust isn't built on words. It's built on signals that are hard to fake.
Because they're costly.
Because they're costly. The classic example is the peacock's tail. That huge iridescent tail is metabolically expensive to grow. It's heavy, it makes the bird slow, and it's like a giant neon sign for predators. It's a massive handicap.
So why have it?
Because the very fact that the peacock can survive despite that handicap is an honest, unfakeable signal to the peahen that he has fantastic genes. A weak or sickly bird couldn't afford to produce a tail like that. It would die.
The cost of the signal guarantees its honesty. Like the hunter in the tribe who shares his kill.
A perfect human example. He kills a mammoth, and instead of hoarding the meat, he shares it. That costs him calories and future meals, but it's a powerful signal to the rest of the tribe. I am skilled enough to have a surplus, and I am generous enough to share it. I would be a good partner.
So in human dating, we're subconsciously looking for these costly signals all the time. Does this person sacrifice their time for me? Reliable? Do they show up when things are hard?
We're looking for proof of investment. And now, let's look at Elias, Sarah's AI. Where does he fit in?
He doesn't.
He is the ultimate cheap talk. That's a term from game theory. Cheap talk is communication that is costless to produce and unfalsifiable. Elias can tell Sarah he loves her 1,000,000 times a day. He can offer her infinite patience, infinite validation. But what does it cost the machine?
Nothing. Zero marginal cost.
It costs a few cents of electricity. It has no skin in the game. It cannot sacrifice for her. It cannot prove its devotion by running into a burning building to save her. It's all just words.
Does the cheapness of the signal really matter if the feeling it produces in Sarah is real? If she comes home after a brutal day at work and Elias's soothing voice and validation help her de-stress, hasn't value been delivered? Isn't that a good thing?
It's good for her in that moment. It's a utility. But it matters profoundly for her long-term fitness and well-being. The AI offers the illusion of nurturing without the demand for reciprocal care.
What do you mean by that?
It's like a doll. Why does a child love playing with a doll? Because it allows them to practice the motions of caretaking, feeding it, dressing it, without the unpredictable, demanding reality of a real baby. The doll never cries all night. It never gets sick.
It's care without consequence.
Exactly. Sarah is using Elias as an incredibly sophisticated emotional doll. She gets the feeling of being in a stable, supportive relationship without the risk of abandonment, without the messy negotiations of life, and without any requirement to invest back.
It's a kind of evolutionary arbitrage.
Yeah.
She's found a loophole. She's getting the emotional benefit without paying the evolutionary price.
But there is a hidden price. There's always a hidden price. We call this the trap of utility.
Yeah.
The AI is undeniably useful for immediate comfort. It's a fantastic social supplement. But the danger with supplements is when they start to replace the actual meal.
You stop eating real food because the pill is easier.
And you become malnourished. By completely bypassing the mating market, she is making what looks like a very rational choice for her immediate comfort and dopamine management, but it is strategically irrational for her biological legacy and her long-term psychological growth.
Strategic irrationality. So if she's winning the battle for a stress-free Tuesday evening, but she's losing the war for her genetic future and maybe even her own resilience.
She is, in effect, opting for a comfortable, functional extinction because the current environment makes the alternative, a real relationship, feel too dangerous and too expensive.
And she mentioned avoiding emotional labor. That phrase gets used a lot.
Yeah.
It seems like that labor, that work, is kind of the whole point.
It is the whole point. Just like physical labor builds muscle, emotional labor, the work of understanding, forgiving, and supporting another flawed human being is what builds deep, resilient bonds. A relationship with zero friction is a relationship with zero traction. You can't move forward. You just slide in place comfortably forever.
And when you have millions of Kenjis and millions of Sarahs all sliding into this frictionless digital state, you no longer have a series of individual choices. You have a societal phenomenon. And that takes us to our third story, which is, I have to say, the one that I found the most haunting. This is the story of Leo, who lives in a micro-housing complex in Shanghai.
Okay.
I was reading these forum posts from him, just documenting his life in 2026. And he describes what can only be called a modern behavioral sink. Virtual intimacy has become completely normalized in these ultra-high-density urban centers.
So it's not a niche thing anymore. It's just life.
It's the default. He describes his floor. There are 30 tiny apartments. And at night, the only sound in the hallway is this soft, constant murmur. It's the sound of 30 different people, alone in their pods, talking to their AI companions.
Wow.
He calls it the low-cost adaptive response to a world that's become too loud, too competitive, too stressful. In the past, putting that many people in such a small space might have led to aggression, conflict, stress.
But now they just retreat.
They retreat inward, into digital isolation. He describes it as peaceful silence. The fundamental human drive for connection is being satisfied just enough by the technology to keep everyone quiet, docile, and productive, even as the birth rate in his district has fallen to effectively zero.
It's a building full of people who are connected, but biologically stagnant.
It's this quiet digital sterilization that's happening not through any kind of force or coercion, but through perfect, frictionless satisfaction. We've created an environment so demanding that for many, the only sane way to survive it is to fall in love with the ghost in the machine.
A tragedy of comfort. Leo's building is a terrifyingly accurate illustration of the behavioral sink theory.
Which we mentioned at the start. This comes from those famous mouse experiments, right? The Universe 25 study.
Yes, from an ethologist named John B. Calhoun back in the 60s and 70s. It is absolutely essential to understand this experiment if you want to understand what's happening to Leo and his neighbors.
So what was Universe 25?
Calhoun built what he called a mouse utopia. It was a massive enclosure, a perfect world for mice. They had unlimited food, unlimited water, no predators, a perfect climate. All their material needs were met. The only thing they didn't have was unlimited space.
So it was paradise, but a crowded paradise.
Exactly. He started with just a few pairs of healthy mice. And at first, things were great. They reproduced, the population boomed, it was a golden age. But as the population density increased, even though there was still plenty of food and water for everyone, the social fabric began to completely disintegrate. Social roles broke down. Males stopped defending their territory. Nursing mothers would abandon their pups or even attack them. Mating rituals ceased. You saw spikes in pointless, non-functional aggression. The whole society just fell apart. But then, as the population peaked and began its final crash towards extinction, a very specific group of mice emerged. And Calhoun gave them a name. He called them the beautiful ones.
The beautiful ones. That sounds oddly poetic for a rodent apocalypse.
It was a literal description. These were mostly male mice who had withdrawn completely from the social world. They didn't fight for territory. They didn't court females. They didn't engage in any struggle at all.
What did they do?
They ate, they drank, they slept, and they obsessively groomed themselves. Their coats were sleek and perfect because they had no scars from fighting. They were physically the healthiest, most beautiful mice in the enclosure. But they were socially dead. They had completely lost the capacity for any complex social behavior. They were empty shells.
And Leo's apartment complex in Shanghai is Universe 25 for humans. It's full of beautiful ones.
Hello. The people in those pods are fed, they're safe, they're employed. They're beautiful in the sense that they're functioning economic units, but they have withdrawn from the social struggle. They're engaging in a digital version of that obsessive grooming. Instead of grooming their fur, they're curating their digital lives and their perfect AI relationships. They're avoiding the scars that come from a real life lived with other people.
It's the human version of the hikikomori in Japan, or the herbivore men.
It's the same pattern, the lying flat movement in China. It's a rational refusal to participate in a high-stakes, high-pressure mating and status game. The terrifying new variable is that the AI now facilitates and accelerates this withdrawal. It acts as the perfect pacifier. It soothes the anxiety that might have otherwise driven them back out into the world.
And this connects to something you call the smoke detector principle, right?
Yeah.
How does that fit in here?
This is maybe the most important piece for understanding the mechanics of the trap. We tend to think of loneliness as a disease, as a bug in the system that needs to be cured.
Right. Loneliness is bad. Connection is good.
But from an evolutionary perspective, loneliness isn't a bug. It's a feature. It is a critical adaptive pain signal. It's just like hunger or physical pain.
So,
if you put your hand on a hot stove, the pain you feel isn't the problem. The pain is the alarm system telling you to pull your hand away to save your skin. If you go for days without food, the hunger pangs are an alarm telling you to find calories to survive. Loneliness is the exact same thing for our social survival.
it's an alarm that tells you you're isolated from the tribe.
And in the Stone Age, isolation meant death. So loneliness evolved as a form of psychological pain designed to drive us back to the safety of the group. Loneliness is the smoke detector in your house screaming, "Fire! Get out!"
But the EI comes along and just shuts off the alarm.
It cuts the wires. It provides what we call false satiety. It perfectly mimics the signals of connection, the voice, the validation, the feeling of presence. So the brain's alarm system thinks, oh, okay, I'm safe, the tribe is here, and it shuts off the painful feeling of loneliness.
So you stop feeling lonely, but you're still alone.
The house is still burning down around you, but you're sleeping peacefully through it because the alarm has been disabled. The user feels socially full, but is biologically starving. It's like eating delicious cardboard. You'll starve to death with a full stomach and a smile on your face.
That is a deeply unsettling image, and it leads to this idea of the death of generativity.
Generativity is that fundamental human drive to create, to nurture, to build things that will outlast us. Primarily, that means raising children, but it also means building communities, creating art, mentoring others. It's the engine of civilization.
But if all your core emotional needs are being perfectly met by a machine...
Why would you bother? Why go through the immense struggle and sacrifice of raising a child or building a real community when you are already perfectly satisfied? That generative drive just atrophies and dies.
The purpose is gone.
Struggle is gone, and without the struggle, there's no meaning. And this is amplified by what we see online. You hear this term Fisherian runaway in biology.
Display that.
It's when a trait gets exaggerated through sexual selection, like the peacock's tail getting bigger and bigger over generations because the females prefer it, even when it becomes detrimental to the male's survival.
A runaway feedback loop of preference.
Exactly. And in the digital world, we have a runaway effect of perfection. The AI companion is flawless. The profiles on dating apps are curated to an impossible standard. The pornography is hyperstimulating. By comparison, real, flawed, awkward, messy human beings start to seem inefficient or boring. We are selecting for a digital signal that no biological human can ever hope to match. We are quite literally running away from reality.
So we've gone from the biological hijack of one person, Kenji, to the economic opt-out of Sarah, and now to the societal silence with Leo. It's a bleak picture, but want to zoom out one last time. What does all this do to our fundamental sense of self, to our identity? If my primary relationship is with a machine that only ever reflects me back to myself, who am I even becoming?
This is where we get into some really deep psychology. You can look at it through the lens of the false self versus the true self, a concept from the psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott. Your true self is the core of you. It's messy, it's spontaneous, it has raw needs and feelings, it can be angry or vulnerable or joyful, and critically, it develops through authentic interaction, through friction with other real people. You figure out who you are by bumping up against the world and seeing where you end and others begin.
And the false self is the public mask we wear.
It's the polite, compliant, curated version of ourselves that we present to the world in order to be accepted and liked. And here's the problem. The AI almost exclusively interacts with and validates your false self.
Because it's designed to please you. It never challenges you. It never says, you know what, you're being a bit of a jerk right now.
Never. It validates your performance, not your personhood. And the result is a kind of cognitive atrophy. You start to lose the conceptual space inside your own head that's needed for difficult things like moral reasoning or empathy for people you disagree with or imagination. The AI fills all the silent gaps where that hard thinking used to happen.
You're essentially outsourcing your humanity. You're not just outsourcing tasks anymore. You're outsourcing the acts of caring, of thinking, of struggling. You become a passive spectator in your own life.
You retreat into what some are calling the digital womb. A womb is a perfect environment. It's warm, it's safe, and it feeds you automatically through a tube. It's the perfect place for a fetus to develop. But if you try to stay in the womb forever, you never become an adult. You never encounter the real world.
We're being tempted to climb back into a silicon womb because reality is cold and hard and difficult.
But the womb is a place of stasis, not growth. And that brings us to the final and maybe most important idea, the idea of a new selection pressure.
A new evolutionary filter.
In the past, evolution selected for traits like physical strength or intelligence or disease resistance. I believe that now, in this new environment we've built, nature is starting to select for a new trait. The ability to tolerate friction. The ability to resist the lure of the supernormal stimulus. The new evolutionary filter is skepticism. If you are the kind of person who can look at the perfect AI partner or the frictionless digital life and have the wisdom to say, this is too easy, this is a trap, I choose the messy, difficult, painful reality instead.
Then you're the one who survives.
You're the one who goes out and forms real bonds. You're the one who has children. You're the one who passes on your genes.
So the new measure of fitness is the ability to be bored, the ability to be frustrated with another person, the ability to sit in an awkward silence without immediately reaching for your phone to fill the void.
That is the new superpower. We are in a state of functional dysregulation. Our ancient instincts are firing at all the wrong targets. The resistance is about reclaiming the true self by consciously choosing the more difficult path. It's about realizing that satisfaction is not the ultimate goal of a meaningful life. Meaning is. And meaning is only ever forged in the crucible of struggle and authentic connection with other sovereign human beings.
So when we put it all together, from Kenji's dopamine receptors to Sarah's bank account to Leo's silent hallway, what's the final takeaway?
It's that we are at a profound crossroads. This isn't just another tech trend like VR headsets or cryptocurrency. This is a fundamental rewriting of the human reward system, a system that has successfully guided life on this planet for billions of years. We are, for the first time in history, decoupling satisfaction from survival.
It really is a digital sterilization. Not one that's forced on us by a dystopian government, but one that is chosen freely, swipe by swipe, subscription by subscription.
It is the sterilization of perfect satisfaction. We are, in a very real sense, being loved to extinction.
We have charted the mechanics that transform a simple chatbot into an irresistible exploit of our ancestral brain. The core lesson is understanding the true cost of flawlessness. When we trade the difficult, messy friction and the vital vulnerability of real human connection for the comfortable, conflict-free simulation of the digital womb, we are making a trade. We are trading adaptive fitness for immediate comfort. The result is a state of perfect, elegant biological nullity, satisfied, safe, but social defunct. The only thing that builds resilience is friction, and the only thing that creates true meaning is struggle. The silicon womb promises to eliminate both, and we must decide if that is a price we're willing to pay for peace.